This is Infants on Thrones.
Minisode.
All right, welcome back to Infants on Thrones. And, you know, I've been republishing a lot of old episodes, these little gems that I've created in the past. And I've been enjoying going back and re-listening to them. But I've got some new material for you today that I still don't know totally what to do with. So, friend of mine, friend of the podcast, Reed, hey Reed, told me the other day about this Google AI podcast creator thing. So one of the things I really enjoy doing in my downtime is having conversations with ChatGPT, and especially now that I can like record my questions to it and then get responses, and it takes me down all these rabbit holes. And I've been thinking, how can I share these rabbit holes with the Infants on Thrones listeners? Because it takes a lot of time. But so Reed shows me this article. He's like, you can upload text and then it creates a podcast for you and it sounds real. So I did that based on a conversation that I had with ChatGPT a couple of weeks ago. And I still haven't listened to what it kicked. It kicked out like this 16-minute response as they're kind of critiquing my conversation with ChatGPT. And, I'm going to publish it without having listened to the full thing. That's what I'm going to do. I just find it so fascinating. But before I put that audio on here, I'm going to share with you some of what this is what I said to ChatGPT. So I started off by saying, I want to float a theory by you. I was thinking about the full moon because there's a full moon tonight. This was a couple weeks ago when there was a full moon, you see. I was thinking about all the different beliefs and superstitions that exist around the full moon, and I was wondering if maybe there's something to all those beliefs and superstitions, because the full moon represents a time when there's maximum sunlight being reflected from the sun off of the moon onto the planet, which is rare. At least it only happens every time there's a full moon. And during that time, the amount of sunlight excites something in the psyche. There's an interaction. There's a correlation between the rays of the sun and human behavior and emotion, just kind of like at the very fundamental level of atoms. We're all kind of made of the same stuff. So anyway, I wanted to bounce that idea off you, ChatGPT, and see what you think about it. And so ChatGPT said, your theory is intriguing and taps into some long-standing ideas about the influence of celestial bodies on human behavior. The full moon has been associated with everything from heightened emotions to increased creativity or even chaos. While scientifically there hasn't been conclusive evidence directly linking the full moon to specific psychological or behavioral changes, the idea of sunlight reflected off the moon creating an interaction with human emotions has symbolic depth. For a more speculative or metaphysical perspective, it's possible that the sunlight bouncing off the moon during a full moon could serve as a kind of energetic amplifier. Anyway, I'm not going to read all of this to you, but basically it was saying that it's kind of like, it's a nice metaphor. And I wasn't totally satisfied with that response. So I said, yeah, there's something about the metaphorical, symbolical way of viewing that, I understand. It's more comfortable to say it that way. It's more comfortable to call it symbolic because we can't say that it's real. Because there's things that scientifically we haven't been able to detect, and so we're just not sure. And so since we're not sure, let's just call it symbolic and metaphorical. But I'm kind of interested in challenging that area of not being sure and acknowledging up front, yeah, there's no scientific evidence for the thoughts that I'm thinking, and and for the questions that I'm asking. But it seems like I'm using some kind of logical deduction, at least it feels like that to me, to recognize, I don't know, I think of the sun as maybe like the heart of the solar system that pumps life in ways like molecules communicating with molecules and atoms communicating with atoms. Like I think there are multi-dimensional layers of existence and the sun is feeding them. And so I think that there are ways that human emotion and behavior is excited. I mean, like the way that a wind would pick up and blow during a storm over the ocean. There's something like concentration of photonic energy hitting the planet like a wave that's at its maximum peak at a full moon. Anyway, I kept going on this, because we're all made of the same stuff, and assuming that there's intelligent exchange of information occurring at all these levels. Do you see where I'm going with this ChatGPT? And then ChatGPT said yes, and Then I said, I recognize that I'm asking this, I'm interested in the interconnectedness of all things. And so I'm trying to put myself and imagine a perspective of the interconnectedness of all things. And so I asked ChatGPT, what are the pros and benefits of having this kind of worldview, of looking at the interconnectedness of all things and kind of having that be my default assumption of the world instead of having my default assumption of the world be, oh, we're all just separate and disconnected and things are chaos and blah, blah, blah. And anyway, this exchange went on over and over and over. We kept going back and forth. So I uploaded the whole text to this Google podcast notebook LM creator thing. And anyway, this is what came out. Thanks for listening to Infants on Thrones. If you find this interesting, please email me and let me know because I'm just absolutely fascinated by this. Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.
Hang on to them hats and glasses, because this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
Ever feel like there's something more to the world than meets the eye? Like we're all, connected in ways we don't fully understand.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And you know how much I love a good mystery.
Right.
And that's what's so fascinating about today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We're starting with this guy, Glenn,
Yes.
who's convinced the full moon, messes with our behavior.
Okay, so like werewolves and stuff.
No werewolves here.
Right.
More like subtle energy shifts, And get this.
Okay.
He even chats with an AI about it.
Oh, wow. So he's going straight to the source, huh? So Glenn's talking to like ChatGPT.
Mm.
And instead of just, spitting out moon phase data,
Right.
the AI uses his theory as a jumping off point to explore like these huge concepts, interconnectedness, trust, even how those ideas would like reshape society.
It's like Glenn unknowingly stumbled onto this hidden door, and the AI is right there with a mischievous grin saying, let's see where this goes.
Okay, I got to ask though, does Glenn actually have any evidence for this moon theory?
Okay.
Or is he just like messing with the AI?
He admits up front it's more of a gut feeling than hard science.
Right.
He's more curious about those what-if scenarios, like what if the moon does act as this, energy amplifier influencing us on some deep level, and what does that say about our connection to, the universe?
So less about proving a theory, more about opening up a new way of thinking. I can get behind that. But how do we go from a chat about the moon to like reimagining society? That feels like a big leap.
Hold on tight because this is where it gets wild. The AI introduces these two contrasting views, right? So you've got the interconnected perspective where, like Glenn suspects, everything is linked. Mm-hmm. And then the practical viewpoint, which is much more focused on measurable results and outcomes.
Okay.
And then they apply these views to, get this, 5 key areas of life: education, healthcare, work, government, the whole shebang.
Wait, so it's like peeking into parallel universes.
Right.
One where we're all vibing on cosmic energy, and then the other one's all about show me the data.
Yes.
I am so in.
Right.
Let's break it down, starting with everyone's favorite, education.
Right. So the AI paints a picture of this trust-based system, right, where education is about fostering curiosity and collaboration. Not just cramming facts. Imagine classrooms where kids are encouraged to think outside the box, to see how subjects connect to the bigger picture, and to really value their unique perspectives.
That sounds idyllic, but also a bit chaotic.
Sure.
I mean, how do you measure curiosity on a standardized test?
Exactly. And that's the tension that the AI is highlighting here.
Okay.
The practical viewpoint on education, which, let's be honest, is what most of us are used to, prioritizes those measurable outcomes.
Right.
Grades, test scores, career readiness. It has its place, for sure, but does it sometimes come at the expense of, creativity and critical thinking?
It's like that saying, we're teaching kids to pass tests instead of teaching them how to think. But I have to admit, as someone who spent their fair share of time daydreaming in class, that interconnected approach to learning, that sounds pretty good to me.
Right.
Yeah.
But, let's not throw out the textbooks just yet.
Okay.
This isn't about saying one approach is right and the other is wrong.
Right.
It's about recognizing the strengths and weaknesses of each and finding that balance
Yeah.
that works for individuals and society.
Okay, so we've tackled education.
Mm-hmm.
What's next on our whirlwind tour of a reimagined world? Don't tell me it's healthcare.
You got it. And this is where that interconnected perspective gets really, really interesting. Imagine a healthcare system that's focused on preventative care
Okay.
and holistic treatments, addressing the mind, the body, and even your environment as interconnected parts of a whole.
Okay, I'm picturing meditation rooms in hospitals and doctors prescribing forest walks.
Right.
Sign me up.
It's a far cry from our current system, which often feels very
Clinical?
transactional, right?
Yes.
You go in with a symptom, you get a treatment, you hopefully feel better.
Right.
But what if instead of just treating symptoms,
Yeah.
we focused on addressing the root causes of illness, which, let's be honest, often lie in those interconnected areas of our lives.
Right. It's like that old adage, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish. You know the rest.
There you go.
It feels like the interconnected approach is all about teaching people to fish when it comes to their health.
Precisely. It's about empowering individuals to take control of their well-being and recognizing that our health is not just our own. It's interconnected with our communities, our environment, even our mindset.
So while the practical viewpoint might have us reaching for the quick fix,
Yeah.
the interconnected approach is about taking a step back
Yes.
and asking, what's the bigger picture here? What's really going on?
And that, my friend, is a question with the power to transform not just our individual lives, but our entire society.
Ooh, I like it.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
We've still got to explore how these contrasting perspectives play out in the worlds of work and even government.
From healthcare, let's move on to the thing that probably takes up, like, a good chunk of your waking hours.
You mean like doom scrolling through social media?
Hey, I was going to say work. But now that you mention it, maybe we should add social media to our list of things to reimagine.
Don't tempt me. But yeah, you're right. Let's talk about work.
Yeah, okay.
ChatGPT had some pretty intriguing thoughts on how those contrasting perspectives, the interconnected and practical viewpoints, might reshape the way we think about employment.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Well, picture this. A workplace where collaboration trumps competition, where employee well-being is prioritized, and where finding work that aligns with your values is actually encouraged.
Yep.
It's a far cry from that cutthroat climb-the-ladder mentality that we see, dominating so many workplaces today.
Okay, now that does sound refreshing, but also a little, I don't know, hard to imagine in practice. How many companies out there are actually putting, employee well-being ahead of profits?
Right. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's where that tension between the interconnected and the practical approaches really comes into focus.
Okay.
The practical viewpoint says, look, businesses need to be profitable to survive.
Right.
And that means focusing on efficiency, productivity, and yes, sometimes competition.
Right.
And there's truth to that. But the AI is challenging us to consider the cost of that approach.
Burnout, stress, Sunday scaries.
There you go.
Yeah, I think we're all familiar with the cost.
Exactly. And it's not just about, individual well-being either, right?
Right.
When people feel valued and supported in their work, when they feel a sense of purpose beyond just, punching a clock, it can lead to greater creativity, innovation, and even a stronger sense of community within the workplace.
So it's not just about being nice to employees, it's actually a smarter way to do business.
Right.
I like it.
But here's where things get really, really interesting.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about trust being at the heart of both those interconnected and practical approaches?
Yeah.
Well, ChatGPT suggests that the way we view trust in the workplace is directly related to which approach we lean towards.
Okay, so break it down for me. How does trust fit into all of this?
Okay, so think about it. In a workplace that embraces that interconnected perspective, right, where collaboration and shared purpose are valued, there's this inherent assumption that people are generally trustworthy.
Okay.
It's like a trust is given approach.
So instead of constantly having to prove yourself, you kind of walk in the door with a certain level of trust already established.
Exactly. And that creates a completely different dynamic.
Right.
People feel respected, valued, and empowered to do their best work.
Yeah.
But now, contrast that with a workplace dominated by the practical viewpoint, where the focus is on individual achievement and competition.
Right.
In that environment, trust often becomes much more transactional.
It's like, prove you deserve to be here. Prove you can handle the responsibility. Prove you're one of us. Ugh, it's exhausting.
It can be. And it often creates this culture of fear and mistrust where people are constantly looking over their shoulders,
Right.
worried about making a mistake or being perceived as expendable.
Ugh, been there, done that, got the stress ball to prove it. Okay, but let's say we buy into this idea that a trust is given approach is, better for both individuals and businesses.
Right.
How do we actually shift gears as a society? It feels like such a massive undertaking.
It is massive, and there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Sure.
But I think it starts with recognizing that these systems we've created, whether it's education, healthcare, or the workplace, they're not set in stone.
Right.
They're constantly evolving, and they're a reflection of our collective values and beliefs.
So if we want to see a different kind of world, a world where trust and collaboration and well-being are prioritized, we need to start by examining our own assumptions.
Exactly.
And asking ourselves some tough questions.
It's about questioning the status quo.
Okay.
Challenging those "that's just how it is" narratives, and being willing to imagine a different way of doing things.
I like the sound of that. Yeah. Speaking of imagining a different way of doing things, we've got one more biggie to tackle.
You're talking about government, right?
Bingo. If we thought reimagining education and work was a tall order, get ready for round 2.
Yeah.
How do you even begin to apply those interconnected and practical viewpoints to something as, complex and often messy as government?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk government.
Okay.
It's a big one.
It is a big one.
Is this where ChatGPT suggests we all just elect a global AI president and call it a day?
Not quite, but
Not like-
the AI does offer some, I think, pretty radical ideas for how we might govern ourselves differently, depending on whether we lean toward, the interconnected or the practical viewpoint.
Okay, I'm ready for radical. Hit me with the interconnected version first.
Okay, imagine a government that operates with radical transparency,
Okay.
where citizens have a real say in actually shaping policies, and where the focus is on long-term sustainability and collective well-being.
It sounds like a utopian dream, but let's be real.
Sure.
How do you get millions, billions of people
Right.
to agree on anything, let alone something as, complex as governing a society?
Right. It's messy, complicated stuff, but
Yeah.
ChatGPT suggests that the interconnected approach isn't about achieving some perfect utopia, right? It's more about this continuous striving to create a more just and equitable and sustainable world through, collective action and a deep belief in, you guessed it, the interconnectedness of all things.
So less about top-down control and more about grassroots collaboration, really empowering people to be, active participants in shaping their own destinies.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together. That our individual well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of the whole.
Okay, I can get behind that.
Yeah.
But now I'm curious, what does the practical viewpoint have to say about all of this? What's their take on the role of government?
Well, as you might expect, the practical perspective is much more focused on efficiency,
Okay.
economic growth, maintaining order and stability, particularly in the context of a competitive global landscape.
So less about, kumbaya moments and more about realpolitik.
Exactly. And look, it's not that the practical approach is inherently bad.
Right.
A focus on economic growth can lead to job creation, technological advancements, things that genuinely do improve people's lives.
Right, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
But where do things start to go off the rails with this approach?
Well, as ChatGPT points out, when the focus is solely on, efficiency and maintaining the status quo,
Okay.
things like social justice, environmental protection, addressing systemic inequalities, all of that can get pushed aside.
Yeah.
In extreme cases, this approach can even kind of devolve into authoritarianism,
Right.
where individual rights are suppressed in the name of order and stability.
Okay, so definitely not ideal if you value things like, freedom of speech and the right to dissent.
Precisely. And that's why I think, this whole conversation is so crucial, right? It's not about saying one approach is right and the other one's wrong.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that there are trade-offs inherent in each perspective, and then asking ourselves, what kind of world do we want to create? What are our priorities? What are we willing to compromise on? And what are our non-negotiables?
Big questions, no easy answers, but I think that's what makes these deep dives so fascinating.
Right.
They challenge our assumptions, push us to think differently, and hopefully leave us a little bit wiser.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
But before we wrap up, remember that whole conversation about trust? Well, Glenn, he doesn't let ChatGPT off the hook so easily.
Oh, no.
He, straight up asks the AI, should I trust you?
Oh, wow.
That's bold.
It is. And it's remarkable because ChatGPT doesn't try to dodge the question or pretend to be infallible, right? It essentially says, trust is earned, even for an AI like me. It even encourages Glenn to cross-check its responses with, external sources.
That's actually really refreshing.
Yeah.
Like, the AI is modeling the very behavior that's, advocating
Let's
for
see. Facts.
transparency, intellectual humility, a healthy dose of skepticism. I like it.
Exactly. But here's the kicker, right? So Glenn then challenges the AI to imagine a world where trust isn't something you earn, but something that you give freely.
Okay.
Something that's, fundamental to our very being.
Okay, so now we're back to that, interconnected perspective.
Exactly.
That idea that we're all interconnected and that trust is the foundation for, deeper connection and growth.
Exactly. And this is where ChatGPT kind of blows my mind.
Right.
It introduces this metaphor of a pro-infant, right? Like a baby that's hardwired for trust and interconnectedness. Imagine like a child just approaching the world with open arms, unafraid to make mistakes, seeing every interaction as an opportunity for, growth and connection.
That's such a powerful image.
Yes.
It's like we're all born with that capacity for trust, that, belief in the inherent goodness of others. But somewhere along the line, we learn to be suspicious, guarded.
Yeah, to build walls instead of bridges, right?
Exactly, yeah.
That's true.
But the beauty of this whole conversation, I think, is that it reminds us that we have a choice. We can choose to lean into that interconnected way of being, to approach the world with, open hearts and minds, even when it feels risky.
Beautifully said.
It's like that quote, I think it's often attributed to Ram Dass, we're all just walking each other home.
Oh, I love that.
It speaks to that same, that same spirit of interconnectedness, of recognizing our shared humanity.
Beautifully said. And to bring it full circle, remember those LDS 13 Articles of Faith?
How could I forget? It's not every day you get to, rewrite religious doctrine with an AI.
Right. Well, the interconnected version is all about, embracing our shared humanity, recognizing the inherent worth of, every being, and understanding that our individual growth is, truly linked to the well-being of the collective.
It's a beautiful vision, one that really, emphasizes compassion, collaboration, and just the idea that we're all part of something much larger than ourselves.
It is. And while the practical version, with its emphasis on, individual responsibility and earning your place in the grand scheme of things, has its merits too.
Yeah.
It's the interconnected version that really resonates with me after this deep dive.
Yeah, me too. And, as we've, kind of explored these contrasting viewpoints, I keep coming back to this idea that, the world we create, the systems that we build, they're all a reflection of our collective beliefs and values.
They are.
If we want to see a different kind of world, a world that prioritizes trust and collaboration and well-being, then we need to start by, examining our own beliefs.
For sure.
And asking ourselves, what do I truly value? What kind of world do I want to be a part of?
Such powerful questions. And as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought from ChatGPT, which is, trust is freely given or earned through steps, and merit, both paths shape our way. So, dear listener, which path will you choose?
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.